As an entrepreneur, you know what it's like to wake up every morning and have to face problems, whether it's new problems, old problems, bigger problems, it doesn't matter. You're always dealing with problems. And so because of that, I want to share with you the number one thing that has been able to help me to solve problems, no matter how hard they are, or whether I've even encountered them ever before. Hi, I'm Zach. I've been a software developer for the last 12 years. I've also been running a marketing agency for the last 7, in which we've been able to generate over $13 million in revenue for our clients. In both programming and in marketing and my business overall, all the time, I'm just dealing with all kinds of problems. And so this one thing that has helped me so much is really simple, but it kind of just comes from a programming principle. And that is, no matter how hard the problem is, as long as you just read it line by line, which essentially means to break it down into its smallest components, then you can finally tackle the problem and solve it, no matter how difficult it is. Even if you don't even know where to start, the best thing to do is just to break it down into the smallest crumbs that you can figure out. Using this principle, I was able to solve problems that nobody else in my development team or company at the time was able to solve. And I think that's because I'm just really determined when it comes to solving hard problems. I don't think it was that I was particularly smarter. I just would stick with it and just keep working on it, chunking it down bit by bit until I could really understand everything about it. And then the problem was already solved. So maybe we could walk through an example as to what this would look like in a typical business setting. We're not just going to talk about development examples. And so let's say you're trying to figure out what's wrong with sales right now. Why is it that sales have been increasing for the last 4 months and then suddenly this month they're down? Well, we could start by breaking this down into its smaller components. What exactly happened? Did we have less orders? Did we have lower ticket values on our orders? See, this is a very basic step, right? But just by being a little bit more specific, we're now breaking up the big problem. Because if we just say something as simple as what happened with sales, that's quite ambiguous. We could go in 100 different directions with that. So let's just start by categorizing it. Was it the quantity of orders? Was it the size of those orders? Is there some sort of economic issue? Did we have a sales department issue? Did we do less outbound? And by being so specific, then we can really get to the roots of the issue. The other problem with leaving things too ambiguous is that it creates a lot of uncertainty, and this uncertainty creates more stress. And then that stress creates more uncertainty around all of the other tasks. And then before you know it, you're not working on anything, you don't know where to start on anything, and so you just end up wasting a ton of time. And I know I've done this so many times that I hate looking back on the times that I did it. But what if your brain is already just kind of messy, and so you really can't figure out even how to break things down? Well, one thing that has helped me to actually do that is writing. And this would be writing, but in whatever way you don't normally write. Now for me, typically I'm writing on the computer, typing, and so then I switch the context or the medium, and then I start writing on a notepad. And this helps me to kind of get my thoughts out and then examine them a little bit more objectively. And then I can read back exactly what I thought at that moment multiple times over. And then I can start to identify exactly what it is that I'm either concerned about or the part that seemed more uncertain. And so now I've kind of chunked out a little bit of that problem. I've broken that problem up into smaller bits. And this is just the first step that you can take into it. Another way that you can try to break the problem up is by explaining the problem to someone else. And as you're talking about it, usually you can actually pop up with a few solutions in your mind, or even realize actually this isn't that big of a problem in the first place. This is quite similar to what is referred to as the Feynman technique, and that is by teaching someone something that you have recently learned, you will then be able to remember it much better and actually understand it at a greater level than you already did. For example, whenever I was dealing with extremely hard coding problems that I had just been racking my brain around for many hours, I would just have another developer come and just listen to me. And I would just start explaining the problem and why it's a problem and why it's not working. And then suddenly the solution just pops up into my head, even though they hadn't said anything yet. And so we want to use these different techniques in order to just break up these problems, because the hardest part is the ambiguity. And that ambiguity delays us from actually taking action, because we notice that once we get started, like once we spend at least 5-10 minutes usually on a problem, we have a much greater level of understanding of it than before, when we were just thinking about, today's the day, I've got to work on that thing that I really don't want to work on it. I've been procrastinating. I've been pushing it off until later because I don't even know what to do about it. But if we can just take one little bite out of it, usually the rest of it is just going to fall apart. And that's just one principle that honestly, it has been a game changer for me when I actually am trying to figure it out. You know, in programming, I would have to deal with so many hard problems all the time. And that has carried over into business, in that we face problems all the time that we've never encountered before. And there aren't many clear answers. Like recently, I was looking for some types of animation, but it wasn't just normal animation like a cartoon, but it's kind of like a 3D rendering, and it's kind of like a movie, but I didn't know exactly what this terminology is called. And I would ask designers and I would ask developers, and none of them know what that specific type of graphics are called. But I just kept asking more designers and just saying, hey, what do you think this is called? How would I refer to this? And just ask more specific questions, because people would just say very typical things like animation. But then eventually I got a different answer. And then not only did that person know the answer, but they actually already knew somebody who did that specific type of work, so that I could finally get what I wanted to be made. Now, that wouldn't be a very hard problem, as I'm sure you're probably thinking, but it's just an example of a problem that comes up in business, because in reality, all of the problems seem easy after you've solved them, but until you solve them, they are just a big question mark. Another problem might be, how are we going to write the copy for this landing page? Like, what do we write? Do we do the design first? Do we do the copywriting first? It's just all ambiguous. And so again, you just need to consult with many people. Just start with a simple Google search. Is it better to write copy first, or is it better to do the design first? And you will get differing opinions. But then once you've read 10 articles, you're probably gonna get kind of an inkling as to what side of the argument probably makes the most sense for you. But it all starts by just taking that first step, breaking it down. Again, I'm just going to keep hammering it home. Breaking the problem down into smaller pieces. Ask simple questions, but try to be specific so that you can figure out where to go next. Which crumb are you going to latch on to next? This could also be referred to as chunking. Like some people would refer to it as like chunking down the problems. But as simple as this is, I think that thinking this way is really, really important. And it helps you to keep your momentum, because you want to keep your feedback cycles very quick so that you can make incremental improvements on your system as a whole. Even if it's not software development like my previous experience, but maybe it's just in your business or landing page optimization or the ads efficiency, it doesn't matter. Just incremental improvements require momentum. And that in order to keep that momentum, you want to keep solving these problems on a regular basis. Now, not every day is going to be a breakthrough moment, but if you have this habit of being able to solve difficult problems, then you're going to do great in business. But anyways, guys, that's all for today. If you like this kind of video, please go ahead and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Bye.